this is Nikki K, and I am your host for Beyond Astro K podcast. So guys, today I'm bringing you another chapter from my Pluto generations. I hit upon the Pluto in Aries, Taurus and Gemini, and now we're going to start with the Pluto in Cancer generation. Now, this is a pretty powerful generation. This generation was actually known as the silent generation. And this is our great grandparents or our parents, some who may not be alive now or some who may be alive, because this generation, not only are they powerful, they tend to live a very long life as well. So, this generation between 1914 to 1938, there was during this time when this generation was born, because I believe that their parents were either Pluto in Gemini or Pluto in Taurus. We're going way back. So this generation was born between 1914 to 1939. And, during this time, there was the First World War. And also this generation was born and lived through the Great Depression. And it was also the beginning of, it was the World War. So this generation is ruled by the moon. So it's very emotional. It's very sensitive. It's also very much about, heritage. But I'll talk more about that. Also, I'm going to talk a mixture about the themes, what they're about, the good and the bad, the ugly and the great, because there's a lot of greatness with this generation as well. I couldn't even believe when I was doing my investigating Pluto work, how great this generation was, but also some of the things that they have also, managed to pioneer is in, this previous generations are still doing it now. So, a lot of this theme with the Pluto, I'm talking about the generation and also the Pluto in Cancer generation. Also, one more thing, guys. I was speaking to one of my friends and she listened to this podcast and she was also listening to it for her actual sun sign. So feel free to listen if you are sun, moon or rising in Cancer, because the themes, good or bad, it may resonate with you as well. So that's what I wanted to say. So a lot of the themes here is about, commitment, family, finding their tribe, home, being domestic, and also food, because, Cancer does rule food. This is the second cardinal after Aries. This is water cardinal. So Pluto in Cancer has set the tone, and they have also pioneered when it comes to parenting their children. This is also about home life, marriage, creativity, the arts, glamour, also home cooking, the media. The Pluto in Cancer generation, some are still alive today, like I said, but they could also, they could actually even be your friends, your great grandparents, your great grandparents, your grandparents, or even your mum and dad. They are definitely responsible for keeping the family together. They set this whole tone of family is everything, family is first. And do you remember, back in the day when you used to visit your parents or grandparents, and you went to their home, it was so comfortable, so warm, and there was nice hot food waiting for you. Or if you're visiting your relatives who were of this generation, and you're staying over and the bed was so comfortable, and they'll bring you hot cocoa, and you have really nice conversations. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the conversations as well will be about the past. They could also be talking about the past when they were younger, obviously if they felt comfortable with you. But this generation does tend to talk a lot about the past a lot. and also how they wish things were in from the past were happening now. Now, again, this could be good or bad. If it is good, they could be talking about, fashion, music, or, other things. But if it's bad, we're going to get to that. So, yeah, so that's like the comfortable side of this generation. And, even like staying with your grandparents. I know like a lot of like my generation, who's Pluto in Libra, we when you're coming home from school and your parents are working, you could stay with your grandparents until your mum or dad or your parents just come to their parents' home, which is your grandparents, and they'll take you home, but the main theme was that when you finish school, you'll go home, you go to your grandparents' house, and that your grandparents will cook for you, and after when your parents come, they'll take you home. It was very normal back in those days, especially if you were born in the 70s, 80s. Especially if you're born in like the 80s as well, this was very normal. So that was some of the other, things that this generation pioneered. And also they were very good at giving advice as well. It's not necessarily an easy generation, because even if you're powerful, it's not necessarily easy. Okay, so I think some of us actually know that as well. So it's not an easy generation. It has, its faults, and this generation, they definitely changed the world to how we know how it is now. So later on, I'll be reading about the Pluto in Cancer celebrities. Oh my God, guys, there is so much. I had to, it was like a Bible of who was born during this time, and I had to pick out the ones that actually really stood out to me. But still, I'll say like 99% of the celebrities that were born in this generation, I know I keep saying this, I know I sound like a broken record, but they definitely set the tone. They definitely pioneered, especially when it came to like entertainment. So I'll be talking a bit about that later. There was also like a huge desire, to protect the family. Pluto in Cancer, they are, it's good or bad, but this is a very over emotional generation. They can be very volatile, and they're all about a certain seated structure. There also is a hidden, because how they appear is how they're really not. Remember, this is cardinal. Okay, so there is like a hidden or outer colder side to this generation. And also definitely when it comes to like indifferences to others who didn't really belong, they wanted to be around a lot of people that were familiar to them. Cancer is all about familiarity. They like to be around people that they feel comfortable with. When they meet strangers, they hide on their shell, or they get very quiet, or they just like really look at the person, try to figure out what they are. So, I feel with this generation, especially when it came to like the 50s and 60s, that's when they sort of like, if they weren't like majority of them actually were tending to the family. But if they were in like that sort of neighborhood, which was like all the houses looked the same, people dressed the same, looked the same, it was like, this is normal. If everyone was wearing pink, for instance, it was normal. If someone wore like, I don't know, a shade of red, it would be like, they'll be sort of like outcasted. Yeah, so we're going a bit into the shadow side of this generation and how, they were. So it was all about, familiarity. And, if someone just didn't belong, they needed to be safe around people. So there was like no wonder why racism really skyrocketed. This was also to do with fear of indifference, fear of others, fear of someone that doesn't look the same color as them. And, as we have to remember, Cancer is a cardinal sign. So they wanted to always be first. They didn't want no one to overtopple them. So from what I feel from this, especially during the Pluto in Cancer time and that generation, was that if it was like black or brown people, for instance, if they moved into a neighborhood, I say neighborhood because this is about the home as well, they'll be outcasted very quickly. Okay, and even like if you're black or brown and Pluto in Cancer, you wanted to belong, but you also wanted to create like a family unit for yourself. So you didn't really feel any way to move into a neighborhood, even if you didn't really belong. You just wanted to be safe. But then you were basically, people were being very prejudiced to you. So this is what happened during this time. So racism skyrocketed. Obviously this was definitely to do with like fear. Also with this, yes, so also this was definitely to do with fear, and also about being first. They didn't want no one else to come over them. Okay, and also let's not forget during this time and this theme of Pluto in Cancer, heritage also plays a huge part, especially this generation. So there could be lots of stories, like I said, about how things should be or how things used to be. There's also suspiciousness played a great part, and I believe that this generation also pioneered like the home family business, especially during like the Great Depression, and when like Uranus was in Taurus, their parents could have been Pluto, Aries or Gemini. So keeping everything within the family was pioneered. Okay, so when you go to like certain shops and you read up about the histories of it, and it started like I don't know, some family business actually started from like Pluto in Aries, but the bigger it was, I feel that it was more when it was during this time. And also it may have blossomed during like the 50s and 60s, but I think that the start of it was started when Pluto was in Cancer. So they might have been, when they were younger, the family business sort of started, but once they were older, they continued the family business and it blossomed in the 50s and 60s. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've read some of these things as well, and most of it started, but this was like the pioneer of the family business, and keeping things in the family was one of the greatest things of what this generation could have done. Also, looking back on this time in the USA, like the Jim Crow came into action, okay, and also the Holocaust. And this is definitely a darkest side of this time, and especially with the Pluto in Cancer generation, even going back to like the racism element. I'll say disclaimer, because if it doesn't apply to you, let it fly. Okay, so if you're Pluto in Cancer watching this, if you are not like this and you never was like this, let it fly. Because remember, Cancer is all about being defensive. So if you feel defensive about what I'm saying, history doesn't lie. And also, being familiar and being truthful is very different as well. So if this does not apply to you, then there's no need to feel away. But if it does apply to you, you know what's happening. So I just wanted to just put that out there, because everyone, if you're born like a certain era, good or bad, you'll pick up themes. But unless you got obviously something else in your chart, because just because you're born in this era, it doesn't mean that you'll actually have the strong attributes, that 100%. You'll have some of it, and if you don't have the bad attributes, that is brilliant. Okay, so yeah. So because of fear, there was also like a great divide happening. that was really embodied. And you know, Cancer's dark side is like they can be very emotional, manipulative, and being extremely defensive, pretending to be sweet on the inside, but also there was like a huge ruthlessness on the outside. And also when I say like ruthlessness, guys, the ruthlessness is, you see some people that, they're like, even now they're older, and they're, oh my God, such a nice lady, nice man, and they appear so nice, they're talking nice and everything. But then, when you hear them talk, they come up with the most dirtiest talk, and you're like, what? That's what they got. That's what this Pluto, this is what this generation has got. Obviously, this is a general, okay? Because some people are naturally nice. Some people, they pretend, okay? So there's a ruthlessness, and it's definitely to keep things how they are and how they should be. And, other themes of this during this time as well is about immigration, racism towards black and brown people, or racism towards their own people. So even in the home, the mum could have ruled the home with an iron fist. She never missed a beat. She was probably the matriarch, okay? To strangers, oh, such a nice lady, sweet on the outside, but the mother never missed a beat. Even as she got older, she probably still had this side to her too. But but also, one thing I did like about this generation was that they were like the first to go out and work, because that the husband was off to war, or even making money, and in order to keep a roof over your head, this is what you had to do. So they went out to work, and they didn't feel any way, and they also made sure they got home and there was food on the table for the kids. They made sure the kids were, they take the kids to school, go to work, come back, and, make sure everything's nice and comfortable at home. And there was hardly any complaining. Whether there was regret about this is another story. But that's what they, once again pioneered. Like I said before, this was the start of a powerful generation. So especially when it comes to the arts, they were the first glamour from 1950. The age of Hollywood was from 1915. The golden age of Hollywood was from 1915 to 1963. And if you look up at the stars of that era, a lot of them were born in Pluto in Cancer, and a lot of them actually made their huge mark when it was, a lot of them actually started out in the 40s, 50s, and they made their mark in the 60s. I believe that Elizabeth Taylor, she was actually Pluto in Cancer, and she was the last of the actual actresses, glamorous but could act. And yeah, it was, they had a certain mystique about them. But still, there was a ruthlessness, because Hollywood was still very ruthless. This was a time where, Hollywood studios will own you, and, so there was a definite ruthlessness. But even at that time, the golden age started off in the Pluto in Cancer. And, the good side of this generation is that whatever they pioneered, especially in the entertainment, other Pluto generations have definitely benefited. They've definitely left a mark on this world, on this earth. Some Pluto some of this generation, they're still alive, they're still here. They could be in retirement, or they could also be still top CEOs. It could be in publishing, politics, the arts, and so on. And we may not know about them, but they are still running things. I think that especially in relationships, when it came to relationships, this generation, it was more about hierarchy than it was about love. Okay, and it was more this is the right thing to do. And that's not for all, because some, remember, Cancer's about nostalgic. So they could have looked at how their parents were, and saw this is how, you know, I would like my, you know, some of the generation, the women could have, or the men could have actually fell in love with someone at first sight and decided this is the person I want to be with the rest of my life. Some married because that's what was, you know, that's what they had to do. So, you know, the nostalgic part of this is looking at what your parents did, but the other side was, you know, this is what I have to do in order not to be made ashamed of, you know. So yeah, so all of this, you know, it's about hierarchy, and also marrying a good person, marry that good girl, marry that good man. Very hierarchy. If you're very lucky to get someone that was rich, it was even better, you know. But still, it was about, you know, everyone was doing this, so everyone just has to do it too. So, you know, so sometimes love wasn't actually there. And, you know, I was very surprised. I wouldn't be very surprised if there was like huge depression that was going on during this time. You know, even keeping like a straight face, you know, being pleasant, even if things were not really great at home. You know, this generation is, you know, not only one of the most pioneering and powerful, but one of the most dangerous as well, because all the seeds that were sown there are actually happening now. And some of the things I actually, you know, researched about, especially when it came to like things to do with like divide and, you know, divide and conquer, you know, separation of others that were different, and that was quite shocking, but still it didn't really surprise me as well. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do a little bit about the tarot cards, because the tarot cards, the tarot cards for this is the Judgment card, which is the Pluto card. And this is, you know, the Judgment card is about an old way of life actually finishing. It's also about a cycle that is ending, and also the cycle that is ending was from like the Pluto in Gemini, which was like the first, you could say that they were the first like media. They were actually the first sort of like media stars. So you're finishing a cycle from then, and we're going to something that's a little bit different and a little bit more glamorous as well. So it's the end of a cycle, but also, you know, and it's also reinventing yourself to be something different. But with Pluto, it is about like an ending has happened. It is also transformation, because Pluto rules death and transformation. We also have the Chariot card for this, and the Chariot card is the Cancer card. So the Chariot card is about, you know, about competing forces. It's about inner and outer. The card is also saying, you know, with this Cancer card, is also about, you know, self-mastery and being open-minded, you know, things from looking back at the past, things from the past. And also is showing this generation that, you know, they try to go with the flow, but, you know, things were probably happening too fast. When you see the Chariot card, it's like there's like this person holding on to like these two animals, and they're the competing forces, and sometimes it goes too fast, but sometimes it goes very slow. But the two competing forces was inside, was, you know, it's about the past is actually helping you. So even though sometimes the past is too much, it actually can help you, especially when you get to the top of your field. And, you know, whether it's home or work, the two competing forces is home and work, you know, family and career. And, you know, but still, you know, it was also saying it is a very rewarding card once you can master these two, you know, inside you, if you don't try to control everything. And, you know, once they are once these are worked with, you know, you can master anything. Once you learn to let go, once you learn to, you know, transform yourself, you know, your world is just a bit more brighter. I'll talk a little bit about the astrology for this generation. So this generation, like, we have Saturn, which is in Aquarius, is in Cancer's 8th house. We also have, Pluto in Capricorn, which is in Cancer's 7th house. So what's happening with this generation, especially with Pluto in Cancer, is opposing them. And the opposition to this is about, showing, especially if this generation is very much alive, very much alive. But, this generation lives very long. They probably live the longest, They probably outlive most of the generations already. Because they're in, like, a lot of them are in their 80s and 90s now, pushing 100. My great-granddad, my granddad is 90 years old. He's born this generation. He turned 90 this year. So, and his dad died in 2010, and he was like 100, and like, I think 103, So, yeah, this generation, they tend to live very long. But with Pluto opposing this generation, it's to do with them, how they are when it comes to like power in relationships, power plays. Are they giving away their power to someone else, or are they, not only are they giving away their power, they have to look at if they're giving away their power, but also when it comes to business and personal. The 7th house is also to do with, open enemies. So if they are at work, because a lot of them are top CEOs at the moment, so if they are at work, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of like drama happening, especially when it comes to like contracts, or they may be giving out sort of like, just remember, this is about control. So they a lot of them are, I think a lot of them are in publishing actually. So they are actually giving like the managers orders. So what is actually happening is that they could be trying to regain more power because the younger generation is actually taking over. So there's a lot of issues when Pluto's in, especially opposing you. This is about, self-mastering when it comes to like giving power away, but also how you're, who's taking power from you, but how you're giving, how you are when it comes to like showing power. Are you being manipulative? Are you trying to be sneaky? Are you, trying to regain power by any means necessary? This is quite a deep one. It's like it's not squaring it actually, so, but also in a relationship as well. Some Pluto in Cancers are actually getting remarried, even though they're advancing years, so there's a big change in their relationships. There's also a big change in how they're viewing, themselves, and how they are, when it comes to them, want to be close to someone. Are they like, are they, putting on like a pretend face to get someone close to them? Are they manipulating the situation? There's a lot of questions that Pluto in Capricorn is asking them, and how far would they go to, be close to someone? How far will they go to, try to be a success when they actually should be resting? As you get older, the general theme is that you slow down, but this generation doesn't tend to slow down. They tend to want to keep hold of power. They tend to want to, reign supreme over things, even though the world is actually changing, because Cancer is about nostalgic. It's to do with keeping things how it used to be in the past. And, especially when Pluto goes, when Pluto, Saturn is in Aquarius, and also Pluto's going in Aquarius. And right now, what's happening with this generation is the 8th house theme. Now, the 8th house is to do with, it's actually the Pluto card, is like death and transformation. So this generation, between now and like 2030, they will, transition. But also, if someone's still here, this is a time that they're going to have to really be honest and dig deep. It's about, facing really uncomfortable truths about themselves and about their power. And also deep intimacy issues will come up. Also past traumas will come up because this is for 20 years. Okay, and we won't see a lot of Pluto in Cancer generation in 20 years time anyway. We'll just see a lot of them this decade. So this is the themes that are going to be coming up for them. And past life traumas can definitely come up, but also issues, uncomfortable issues will now have to be put on the table for them. And a lot of it's going to be very uncomfortable. There's also going to be a lot of uncomfortable tearing down happening with this generation. And I believe that if this generation, especially if they're in positions of power, if they have actually been good, if they've been great, if they've been like doing the work themselves, they'll be fine with it. But if they haven't, if they've been controlling, manipulative, ruthless, indifferent, resistant to change, because it's very hard for this, then that's when it's going to be uncomfortable. And I think we're actually seeing that now. And there's no going back. This generation cannot change, even if they wanted to. I know this sounds harsh, but it's just too late. And but what Pluto is actually doing is showing them the ugly side of themselves. You can say it's ugly, but it's also the shadow sides that they've been hiding. If you're like that top CEO and you've been bulldozing your way to show about I'm in control, and then you've left bloodshed along the way. Saturn is here already, but when Pluto comes in like 2-3 years time, that's when it's going to be a case of watch the ride. So like I said, they're one of the most pyrene generations. And what I'm going to do, guys, before I go, I'm going to read the Pluto in Cancer generation celebrities. Like I said before, it was a long list, guys. It was a long list, but I picked out the great the ones that actually spoke to me. But like I said, there's a lot of them are great. So the Pluto in Cancer generation is Martin Luther King, Dalai Lama, J.F. Kennedy, Che Guevara, Sean Connery, Clint Eastwood, Little Richard, who's a rock and roll pioneer, Dorothy Dandridge, Sidney Poitier, Maya Angelou, Sammy Davis Jr., Diane Carroll, Harry Belafonte, Ruby Dee, Cicely Tyson, Toni Morris, Nelson Mandela, Yoko Ono, Jackie Collins, James Baldwin, Muddy Waters, another rock pioneer, Sam Cooke, Andy Warhol, Chuck Berry, another pioneer of rock and roll, James Brown, another pioneer, Ozzie Davis, Rita Moreno, B.B. King, Jackie Kennedy, Nina Simone, Miles Davis, Queen Elizabeth II, Rupert Murdoch, Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, and Marilyn Monroe. Guys, there's more, and I think there was pages and pages and pages, and I just had to just stroll through. There is more to this generation. This is, for all of the craziness that this generation has, for all of the dangerous that they have, for all of the crazy, the shadow dark side manipulation, emotional control, they are pioneers. They've set that tone. And what has happened is what they pioneered, especially the musicians, like Sammy Davis Jr., B.B. King, Muddy Waters, Little Richard, who else? Chuck Berry, James Brown. These are, they set the tone for like people like the Beatles, because the Beatles studied these guys. They studied them. Pluto in Leo didn't invent this. It was all Pluto in Cancer. Yeah. So I pay homage to them. Because who's going to actually take the baton from them is the Pluto in Libra. Yeah, is the Pluto in Libra. And it is because they are cardinal. all cardinals take the baton from the other cardinal. So I pay homage to all of these stars, even like the writers like Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison, you know, everyone here that I've written, I pay homage to, because regardless of how they've come into this earth, they made their mark. And even if it was, and even some of these people, you know, because remember, even though you're born in this generation, you are not. This generation is showing your power. You know, this generation is shown that they are going to be first in something, but the star signs is very different. Yeah, but the star signs is very different. You know, because you got like Martin Luther King was Capricorn, Dalai Lama Cancer, JF Kennedy Gemini. Everyone was a very different star sign. You know, Chuck Berry was Libra. You know, they're all very different star signs. You know, there was a mixture of cardinal, mutable, air, and you know, they were all different stars, and their charts are very different. But with the power of the Pluto, especially with being in Cancer, which is the cardinal, which is, you know, whenever the sun enters Cancer, which it is now, it sets the tone for the next 3 months. So what this generation did, they set the tone for the next generation. So whatever we started, yeah, you're going to look at what we did and you're going to take the baton and run with it. But remember, it's who started it. And it's not to say Pluto in Leo is not pioneers, because they are. They're just louder with it. But it's the Pluto in Cancer that are leaders. So I pay homage to Pluto in Cancer, and I also pay homage to Pluto in Cancer celebrities, pioneers. So guys, that was the Pluto in Cancer generation, the silent generation, but one of the most powerful generation. Like I said before, guys, you know, look at this for your sun, moon and rising, because this can show you where, you know, how things can actually pan out for you. And if you're even if you're like in a different generation, like Pluto, Leo, Scorpio, Libra, look at this as well to see, oh, I thought I'll do, you know, to see, you know, if you're creating something, this is also going to show you what came before that as well, you know. So yeah, look at for your sun, moon and rising, and you know that the Pluto in Cancer for this generation really made this generation powerful. But also, you know, when it's your sun, moon and rising, it can show you how powerful you can be. And it can also show you, you know, when you're abusing your power, what could actually happen. And if you're holding on to something, if you're being nostalgic about something, if you're being ignorant about something, you know, this really does make sense. Okay? So guys, thank you very much for listening. I look forward to telling you guys about the Pluto in Leo generation, one of the stars, you know, let's call them the kings and queens, you know, yeah, the kings and queens, yeah, because a lot of them are still like running things as well now, yeah. So yeah, I'm very happy with this. You know, I'm very happy like researching about the Pluto in Cancer, and it does feel a bit emotional for some reason, you know, because this generation has done so much, and also what happened in the world at that time. They went through so much. It was such a rough time, but a lot of them pioneered. A lot of them, you know, they made it. They made a mark in the world. And if you are sun, moon and rising in Cancer, this can actually show you, you know, you can make a mark in the world regardless of how your background was. And also guys, another thing, don't forget, you know, to like, share and subscribe. Also, you can leave like a voice message for me as well. And yeah, thank you very much guys for listening, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.